Hi everybody, welcome back to Mobility IQ practice. Today's class is going to work with the spine and the shoulders, some hip opening and also some hip strengthening. You'll want one block for today's practice and you can begin laying down on your back. And aiming to breathe to your outer edges. So the inhale feels like the skin of the belly, the rib cage, and the chest fills and gets a little tighter. And then the exhale is a softening of the torso, the belly, chest, rib cage. And the expansion pattern is happening in those three parts. So it begins down in the belly, then it climbs up into the rib cage, and then the breath climbs up into the top of the chest. And the exhale allows for all of those places to soften. And the breath is becoming smoother, less jagged along the edges. And the duration of the breath is lasting a bit longer. So we're breathing with intention. And allow your eyes to open. Bend your knees if they're not already. And take your arms, reach them straight up to the ceiling with your palms facing into each other. And then can you keep your lower back somewhat against the floor, so that feeling of stability through the lower belly. And reach your arms like you could tap your fingertips right up to the ceiling above you. And feel the shoulder blades pull apart on your back. And then go the other way where you sink your armpits towards the floor and they get hollow and deeper. So this is the work of protraction and retraction. We're just lying on our back as we do it. Reaching up through the arm bones like they grow longer out of socket. And then plugging the back of the shoulders into the mat beneath you. Do this a couple of times. The floor is in the way, so you won't have the biggest range of motion, but you can start to get a sense for when you reach your arms, the scapula wrapping around the outside of the rib cage. And when you suck your arm bones into socket, the feeling of the shoulder blades stamping into the ground underneath you. Then come to what feels like neutral, where you're not reaching, you're not sucking your arm bones in. Meet your palms together in extended prayer. And then imagine that your palms just got super glued together, so the fingertips are touching one another. And start to take your arms side to side. Think 3 inches over to the right, back through center, and then 3 inches over to the left. So this very shallow range of side to side. And begin to notice that it's not just your arms and hands moving in a vacuum, that this movement, this slight twisting action, is actually happening from what's called your shoulder girdle, which is comprised of your collarbones, your upper arm bones, and also the shoulder joints themselves. And then can you make that side to side a little bigger? So you're reaching maybe 6 to 8 inches over each way. So you start to feel this rotation happening. And then make it a little bigger, so now it's your rib cage that's rotating as well as the shoulder girdle. And the only kind of rule is not to let your hands slide past each other. So you're keeping your fingertips super glued. Then can you make that side to side a little bigger so that you start to lift the back of the left hip, or think of lifting your left buttock off the floor. Coming back to the center. And then as you go to the other side, you'll feel that opposite back of hip or buttock lift off the floor. And as you keep going side to side, notice that your thigh bones want to start to rotate with you. Your knees want to start to rotate with you, and you might feel the weight shifting around on your feet. Okay? And really start to let everything go side to side. And then a little more of that twist, so you're really rotating so far over to the right that the head goes right, both knees swivel to the right, kind of like a windshield wiper, and then you come back to center and you go the other way. So we're integrating the whole skeleton in this movement now. Do 2 more each direction. Like really letting yourself roll. Then find your way back to the center, the feet grounded. Let your arms rest by your side. And then bring attention to the length of your spine and how the length of the spine might more easily be resting against the mat underneath you. Now that we've opened up it's the back line of fascia, or the back line of tissue that runs along the back of the shoulders and down the length of the spine to the back of the pelvis. Take your arms by your side, palms facing down. Stretch your left leg long along your yoga mat. Flex your left foot nice and strong. And then raise your right knee towards your chest. And then can you circle your right knee out to the right, sweep it down, bring it to the left, and back around towards the chest. So we're doing like a hip stir with the thigh bone. And I say hip stir, H-I-P, separate word, S-T-I-R. Not hipster, like a cool person. So stirring with that right hip in an active range of motion pattern. Try not to let your left butt cheek lift as you're stirring your right hip. So it's not the pelvis twisting, it's the thigh bone moving. Circle back the other way so you can make it as big as possible without letting your hips rotate. And then bring that leg all the way in towards you. Go ahead and wrap your hands around the front of the shin. Give yourself a deep squeeze to close the front of your hip joint. Interlace your hands behind your right thigh. Do a couple bend and straighten. So we're just hydrating or lubricating the knee joint through that flexion and that extension pattern. When you next straighten your leg as best you can, do a couple ankle rolls at the top there, maybe 3 or 4 times in one direction. 3 or 4 times the opposite way. Then release your right leg long, let it stretch really long so you're reaching out through the right heel. And bring the left knee towards you. Keep your arms by your side, palms on the ground. Hip stir or thigh bone stir with the left leg. Start small, right, so you can see what it takes to secure your pelvis and let this come from just your thigh bone. And then maybe you get a little bit bigger in your range. So no hips a-twistin'. And keeping the belly button and the pubic bone pointing straight up to the ceiling. Circle the opposite way. You might hear little pops and clicks coming from that hip joint. keeping both butt cheeks glued to the mat. And then bring it around, knee to chest, grab the front of shin with both hands, envelop it. Close the front of your hip joint so you're pulling in tightly. Then interlace behind, do your bend and straightens. How straight can you get? How bent can you allow the knee to go? So think of full range of motion through flexion and extension in that knee joint. Then go into your straightish or straightened position. A few ankle rolls, slow in one direction. And then a few back the opposite way. And then releasing that effort, release that leg, stretch it long. Reach through both heels. Think of sliding the skin of your calves long towards your heels, then reaching the calves and heels towards that edge of your yoga mat. Now the arms go up, palms facing up. Can you reach your arms actively away from your heels? Feel your side body getting longer. So stretching, like you're stretching all of your skin taut. Take one more breath with that big reach, like train tracks reaching. And relax entirely. Bend your knees one at a time and then roll on to your right side. From there, bring it up to a tabletop position. Come to your hands and your knees. And grab that yoga block, that tool, and place it on your sacrum. So we're going to do that spine segmentation using the block as the feedback. So if you balance it right on the back side of your pelvis, placing the sacrum in neutral, and then hands underneath the shoulders. Try to secure your shoulders in position by pulling your chest away from your wrists just a tad, reaching the crown of your head towards the front of your room. And then doing little baby cat-cows with kind of just your butt. So when you inhale, you're lifting your sit bones up. And when you exhale, you're allowing the sitting bones to tuck underneath you. And you're doing your best to not move anything above the block, just what is underneath your yoga block as we loosen up the sacrum, or I should say we're loosening the lower part of the lumbar really, because the sacrum doesn't actually have much segmentation because all the bones in the sacrum are fused together. But we do have good movement at the last bone of the lumbar, which would be our L5, and the top of our sacrum, which would be S1. So this is moving L5, S1. And then come to what feels like neutral. Reach back with one hand, slide that block up one entire block's distance. Now we're really in the lumbar. We're working with L1, L5. And can you cat-cow the pelvis and that part of the spine that's right underneath that yoga block? But nothing that's above it. So trying to isolate. And in that tucking under, there's a feeling of your belly really working, because the abdominals are helpful for bringing our spine into flexion. Then come to neutral in both your sacrum and your lumbar, so that feeling of like flat back tabletop. Take your block and slide it up one more time. So now we're in the thoracic, the lower part of the thoracic spine. Secure your hands, crown of head reaching. Keep your shoulders stable. Move everything that was below the block and what is directly underneath the block. So cat-cowing through the sacrum, the lumbar, and the thoracic. You can even start to feel like shoulder blades pulling away from each other as you pull your chest away from your wrists. So it's like you're doming the upper back towards the sky. And then dropping the upper back towards the ground. And some of you have been taking these classes for a long time with me. So my hope is that you're noticing, wow, like I certainly am growing in my mobility, my ability to segment these different parts of my spine. And if you're just at this a couple weeks or a couple months, know that your mobility will increase. One more time, rounding everything beneath and what's under the block. And then coming back to what feels like neutral or flat back. Now, lose the block entirely. Let's let our neck get involved here. So start with neutral. Inhale, sit bones up, belly down, rib cage, chest drop, chin goes forward and it goes up. Keep your chin up. Exhale, tuck the tailbone underneath you. Dome the belly. Dome the upper back, dome the shoulder blades, bring the chin under towards your chest. Do a couple more. Sit bones lifting, belly down, rib cage, chest drop, chin forward up. Reverse it, tailbone under, belly up, rib cage, chest pulling away from ground, chin underneath you. One final time. Climb up your spine until you're in that really deep cow. Keep your chin up and round the spine from the bottom first, then all the way up to the top to bring you into your really deep cat. And bring it to a neutral position. Open your knees a little wider than your hips. Bring your big toes to lightly touch. Sit your hips back in the direction of your heels. Now, that may not be so comfortable for you, so you're also welcome to put your block in between your feet so you have a little something to rest your bottom on. The idea is to bring the spine forward on a high diagonal and to reach the arms out in front so they're absolutely straight. Step your left hand into the center. Bring your right arm behind you, laying the back of your wrist and your palm against your sacrum. Now we rotate. Can you inhale, opening your chest and your head to the right? So the neck will turn in this one. As you exhale, rotate chest and chin towards the floor. So when you begin, you're looking at that left hand, and then you spiral your eyes as you rotate open. So you're looking up to ceiling. And then you come out of the rotation and your eyes go back to seeing that left hand. Do some more on your own. Inhale is nice for opening because the rib cage expands. Right? And exhale helps us to contract the ribs and spin back towards neutral. Take one more here with that left hand centered. Coming back to square the chest towards the floor, chin towards the floor. Switch your hands so that right hand gets centered, left arm goes behind your resting back of hand on sacrum. Use your breath to move your spine. Inhale, open rotation. Exhale, unwind. Now that you've got the rhythm, explore lengthening and rotating. And then unspiraling and coming back. Notice your right elbow might try to bend. Keep your right arm straight and strong. Take 2 or 3 more, really turning left rib cage, chest to the left. And coming back towards a squared to the floor position. So you're unwinding completely. Coming back to the start point. And then walk your hands back towards you. You could stay sitting on your heels, or if you prefer a cross-legged seat on a yoga block, you're welcome to do that. And take your arms, both of them, into the position we just had, which is hands go behind the back, right? So you might lay your palms on top of each other back there. And notice how your shoulders could be slumped forward a little, right? Because our arms are in internal rotation. And that's pretty normal. The shoulder blades to be slumped forward, the shoulder heads to be slumped forward. In this position, let's work with the scapular movements. And we've not done this in class before, but we're going to give it a shot. So can you keep your hands how they are, shrug your shoulder blades high up by your ears? Could you now squeeze your shoulder blades back behind you? You'll notice that that closed chest position becomes an open chest position. Can you slide your shoulder blades down your back? And then can you reach your arm bones, the head of your arm bones, front of the shoulders forward, so that you purposely do kind of hunch and close the chest? Do it a couple times. Shrug up, squeeze back, slide down, and then bring forward so you're actually closing your collarbone. 2 more in this direction. Up, back, down, and forward like wings. Last one. Up, back, down, forward. Go to what feels like normal. So you're not pulling back, you're not sliding forward, you're not shrugging up. So this is neutral with our arms in this internal rotation. Let's reverse. Back is first, so pinching the shoulder blades together. Up is second, shrugging up by the earlobes. Forward is third, close your collarbone. And down is fourth, so the arm bones drag down. Again, back, up, shrug. Forward, close the collarbone. Slide the armpits down towards the hips for the down. 2 more. Back, up, forward, down. Last one. Back, up, forward, and down. Relax your arms. Give them a little bit of a shake. And then coming back to that sitting on your heels position, or you can keep your block there, but we're leaning the spine forward on the high diagonal. So a lot of things we do vertical, sitting up, but when we lean a little forward, gravity's different, right? It makes us work in a little bit more strength, right? Or a little more active range of motion. Take your left hand, set it in front of you, just how we were doing that other movement, so it's centered. Take your right arm long by your ear. And we're doing a single arm swimmer. So right arm starts long by the ear, palm down. Take your arm out to the side by a few inches, 3 to 5 inches. Bring it off to a T, right? Palm facing down. Flip your palm to face up, roll your shoulder forward. Bring the arm along the side of your body. Your palm is facing up, your wrist is facing up. Now press your whole back of your arm up towards the ceiling. Now bend your elbow, graze your hand, hover it above your back there. Then go to a straight arm. Raise it up to a T. Your palm is still facing up. Flip the palm down. Raise your arm up on a diagonal away from your ear. Then go back to vertical, reaching long by the ear. Release your right hand where your left hand was and extend your left arm long by your ear. Go out to the side by a few inches. Go out to a T. Flip your palm up, shoulder rolls forward. Bring your arm along the side of you. Press the whole back of the arm up to the ceiling. Keep it as high as you can. Bend your elbow, hover your hand a bunch above your back. Go back to straight. Raise to T, palm is still facing up. Flip wrist and palm down, external rotation of your shoulder. Raise up so it's reaching on a diagonal away from your ear. Then go to vertical. Release your left hand. Where your right hand is, let's go back to the right. We're going to add a little something, something. Vertical reach, bicep by the ear. Chin is slightly down, nose is pointing down. Reach your arm out to the side by a few inches. Bend your elbow. Can you not grab your head, but keep your palm wide, hovering at the back of your skull? Elbow stays wide. Take the arm, reach it on that diagonal line. Bring your arm out to a T. Flip the palm up, shoulder rolls down and forward. Bring the arm along your side. Press the whole back of the arm, including the palm, up to the ceiling. Bend your elbow, hinge from the elbow joint, float the hand above the back there, and breathe. Straighten so you're on a low diagonal line. Raise out to your T formation, palm down, go up to a high V, reaching your arm on a diagonal. Chin stays slightly down, nose is pointing down. Bend your elbow like you're going to grab your head, but don't. Don't drop the elbow when you bend it. Now vertical reach, bicep by the ear. Made it a little more complicated. Place the right hand down. We're going to add that little complex piece into this last side. Start with the arm long by the ear. Take the arm out by 5 or 6 inches. When you bend your elbow, keep the elbow raised. Go to grab the back of your head, but you're hovering your hands, so you're not quite grabbing. Straighten out on the diagonal line. Reach the arm to a T formation, right out from the center of the chest. Flip palm and wrist up. Bring the arm along the side body. How high can you lift it? How much can you press the back of that arm up towards the sky? Keep it that high. Bend the elbow. Graze the hand or float the hand above the back there. Straighten the elbow. Raise to your T. Then clear rotation, wrist palm down. Go up to the diagonal reach. Check in with nose and chin. Bend the elbow, keep it high. Hover the hand at the back of the skull. Then go into vertical reach, straight by the ear. And release your left hand down. So as you lean forward or you get more horizontal, more muscles have to work to help us out in that. Come all the way up from where you are. Let's go on to our backs, and we're going to do a lot of stuff side lying and on the back today. So what you'll want to do, I'm going to show you the setup, is have your yoga block, lay down on your side, put the block in between your knees and calves, right? So you're keeping your hips or your thighs at hips distant. And then this bottom arm is reaching forward. The top arm is on top of it, and you're letting your head kind of hang. That doesn't feel great for everyone, so you're also welcome to put a little towel or a blanket underneath your head. So what you want is your whole body is facing one direction. Right? Then the top hand is going to drag like a rainbow over your head as you roll open with your chest to the right. And then you're going to drag the top hand over the head as you come back and you come out of that rotation, so the palms will touch. So I love this idea of fingertip dragging like a rainbow up, and then you open your whole rib cage and your whole chest. Palm is facing up when you open into that rotation. And as you rotate back to where you began, the palm orients down, touching the palms together. Let's do like a bunch of these. So this big spiral open. And then a spiraling closed. And here's the deal. When you spiral open, that right shoulder or that opposite shoulder, the arm that's reaching, it's probably not going to be touching the ground. Right? And that's cool. Just let that be. Let it be hovering. So this is working that thoracic rotation and also that neck rotation, so cervical rotation of the spine. The hips are steady. The block is held between the inner thighs. It's very similar to what we were doing earlier in class, only we've changed our orientation to gravity. Come back all the way, matching the palms. And then take this setup that you have and you're going to flip it over. So you can just roll and flip it, or you can orient to the other edge of your yoga mat, which I'm going to do so I can stay kind of on screen here. Secure the block between inner knees, inner shins, so you're keeping your hips stacked and your thighs at hips distance. Arms reach forward. Head can be down or propped up on something. So think of your shoulders as stacked. And then it's the opposite arm that's going to rainbow, fingertips drag. Then, as you open up, that palm and bicep will face up to the ceiling. And then you close it and come right back to where you began. And just feeling in. Feel into the like sticky spots in there and the tight spots, and move slow enough that you can create some space in those spots. And be very adamant that your hips stay stacked and that your knees stay stacked on top of each other, even if it means you're squeezing that block with your inner knees and inner shins. And two more of your rainbows. How big of an arc can you create? Finding your way all the way back to where we started. And then lose your block for now. Come to a position where you can prop your head up with your hand. We're going to stay with the knees stacked on top of each other. And if this doesn't feel good for your neck, you can always lay your head against your biceps so your neck is more in alignment with your tailbone. Right. And then take that free hand, put it in front of your chest so the elbow will be pointing kind of up towards the ceiling. And let's do controlled rotations for the hip joints in this position. Start by pressing your bottom leg down into the floor so you're securing your pelvis, right? Then bring the top knee towards the elbow. Keep your knee really, really bent. Keep your foot quite flexed and open that thigh bone up to the ceiling. Then can you swivel internally? So take the inseam of your pants and your shorts and turn it in and back. And then drop your top leg till it almost touches your bottom leg. Now kick way back so your heel reaches back behind you. You should feel a little glute firing, a little booty squeeze happen there. Then reverse. Can you do knee to the ceiling, toes to the ceiling? Try to bring your knee up towards your shoulder. So you're kind of closing that outer hip joint. And then glide the knee back in front of you towards that elbow. Go back to where you started. Don't let the top leg drop on the bottom leg. Push the bottom leg down into the floor. Keep it stable. Knee to elbow. There's your hip flexion. Knee and toes to sky. There's the external rotation. Internal is like a pivot, whoosh, inner thigh in, outer heel out, and then drop your leg a little closer to the floor. Now kick that thigh bone back behind you. Reach from the front of the hip out through the left heel. Then turn, knee and toes to sky. Then bring the knee towards the shoulder. And then glide the knee in front of you. Go back to knee to ceiling. And then grab your ankle and put that foot in front of that bottom thigh. Now take that bottom leg straight. And I like to hold on to the ankle here to keep it secure. Flex the bottom leg really strongly. Push the right hip into the floor, so the bottom hip into the floor. And can you float your bottom leg off the ground and just hold it up there for 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let it come all the way down. Okay, so that looked so easy from where I'm seeing. So I want you all, it takes a little finagling, to tuck a block underneath the bottom outer calf, right? So the bottom outer calf is propped up on some height. And then we're coming back to that other foot planted in front of us and holding the ankle. So it takes a moment to set it up, but once you're in there, we're good for a few minutes. Okay, now that you have it, press with like 30% of your maximum amount of effort. Press that bottom shin into the yoga block and just hold it in a downward push. So it's the outer shin that's pushing down. And feel what happens to the hip underneath you. Keep holding that in the downward push. Okay, now can you take the hip that's underneath you and push it into the ground and float that bottom leg up as high as possible. Hold it like you're trying to press the inner ankle, inner thigh up to the ceiling. Just keeping that in contraction. One more breath. And then let it come to rest on the yoga block. So there's 2 patterns of energy we're working. We're working a downward push and an upward float. Let's go back to the downward push. So push the outer bottom shin into the block. Feel what happens to the hip that's underneath you. And if you were working in your percentages of effort, let's say you're at 50% now. So we jumped from 30 to 50. Keep pushing down, keep pushing down. And then go the opposite way. Float the leg high up, away from the block. How high can you lift it? Hold it up there like you're driving the inner foot, inner ankle, inner thigh, inner shin up into the ceiling. 3 more breaths. Keep holding it up. And you're going to notice it's not just the bottom hip that's getting worked. It's the top one too. And slowly release all the way down. Okay, 1 more round. So for as much as we're working the hip that's underneath us, you can feel the stabilizing happening in that top hip of the leg that's crossed over. Now let's go to 70. So we're taking another jump of 20%. Push the bottom shin into the yoga block. Can you feel the tone of the hip that's underneath you? Keep pushing down. Keep breathing full breaths. And then from the downward pattern into the up, raise it, float it, hold it high as you can. It's getting higher every time, I can see. Hold it up there, another 3 breaths. And let it all go. Stretch the top leg long. You can do that little bit of heel of your hand against the top hip like a booty rub. We're going to switch over to the other side. So you could flip on your back if you think you don't need to see, or orient yourself to the other side of the yoga mat. Bend both knees. Maybe have your block down there for when you need it. Bend both knees. We're starting in 90-degree angle of the legs, right angles of the legs, head propped up in the hands. The free hand is in front of your chest. Controlled rotations for the top leg. First movement is knee to elbow. Second movement is opening to ceiling. So think shin, toes, knee to the ceiling. Then your internal, swirling, inner thigh in and back, outer heel, outer ankle wide. And then you're dropping, so there's that inner thigh work. Now you're kicking back from the front of the hip out through the right heel in a backwards reach. Can you stay in extension, but add that external rotation, that swirling of knee and toes to ceiling? Then bring it up to the shoulder. Bring the leg in front, back to flexion towards the elbow. Go back like you're going to stack your legs. Don't let them touch. Let's do it again. Knee to elbow. Open up. How wide can you go while keeping your pelvis stacked? So it's right hip staying on top of left. Internal, work the internal, right? So rather than it being loose, like make the legs strong as you do it. Then pull the top leg isometrically down. Now kick back from the heel and front of hip, reaching way, way back behind you. Go back to external, open it up. Toes, knee, shin pointing to ceiling. Knee up to shoulder. How close can you get it? Knee in front of you towards the elbow. Good. Okay. Go back to knee, open to sky. Then grab your ankle. Take the foot in front, take the bottom leg long. So we're going to start without the block, just so we're even on both sides. Flex the foot strong, push the leg into the floor. When you do that, can you feel what happens to the hip that's underneath you? Take a couple breaths with that strong push down. Then go into your pulling up pattern. How high can you hold that leg? So the bottom hip pushes into the floor to lift the inner thigh. You can feel how the top hip is stabilizing down as well to help. One more breath with the float. And then bring it all the way back down. Okay, come on out. Put the block underneath the outer calf. One leg might feel a little sleepier than the other, but let's work them the same. Come back to side lying. Place the foot in front, grab the ankle so you secure it. And then there's the 30% of you. You're distinguishing that for yourself. Down, pushing down into the prop. And you're just holding yourself in that contraction, the downward push. Can you now go right into the upward lift? How high? Hold it up there. As you're holding the leg up, squeeze the top hip down. Okay? So it's stability around both of the hip joints. And let the leg come back to the block. So that was at 30%. Round two, we're bumping it up 20%. Push down, drive down. Like you could imprint that yoga block right into your yoga mat, right into your carpet, right into your wood floors. Top hip is squeezing down as the bottom hip is pushing down as well. And then go into float. How high? Lift. Right? Like you could press the inner line of that lifted leg right up into the sky. And hold it up there. Okay, let it go. Last round, we're going to bump to 70. Right, so you're adding 20% of your effort. So gauge that and push down 70%. What do you got? Top hip squeezes down, bottom leg pushes down. Last breath in the downward energy. Now it's the upward. Lift, hike, hold. Maybe you can go even higher. Couple more breaths. Maybe you can go even higher. Top hip down, bottom hip pulling up. One more breath. And then let it come all the way down. Huh. Give yourself the heel of the hand massage. And then let's actually go to tabletop. I want to do a little bit of hip circling. So come into hands and knees. Put your knees, instead of at hips distance, can you bring them together? So it's like you have one leg instead of two. And then allow your hips to move. It might be a circle, it might be an oval. But really think of like the lateral, the out to the side is nice and deep. So we're stretching through the outer hips there. And as you next swing it back to the center, come to hands and knees and stick your right leg out to the side. And the toes will be pointing in the direction that your fingers are pointing. And then flex that foot strongly. So what it means is that you might just be on the inner edge of the foot. So the sole of the foot is pointing away from you. And I want you to try turning your toes to the ceiling from the thigh bone. And then turning your toes back to pointing in the direction of the front edge of your yoga mat. So you may even bring your right hand to your hip as you're doing this, because I really want it to come from the thigh bone. So it's not your pelvis rocking. It is pelvis stays secured, thigh bone spiraling inside of that hip socket. Turning in and turning out. So think of rainbowing with your foot, but not letting your pelvis move. Now, if you were to let your pelvis move, you could create all sorts of air quotes external rotation, but it would be coming from your pelvis rather than your thigh bone. Do a couple more. And then coming back. Right hand under right shoulder, right knee under right hip. Switch to the left, stick your left leg out to the side. Flex the foot, so you might be on inner edge of foot. That means sole of the foot is pointing away from you. And if you're worried about staying honest, bring your left hand to your hip and then start to go toes up, toes forward. So the pelvis is not moving, but the long bone of your leg is externally and internally rotating. Good. Come back to sole of the foot to the floor. Left wrist under left shoulder, left knee under left hip. Bring it forward and down onto your belly. When you get there, you can prop yourself up in a Sphinx pose, casual. And then take your left leg out to the side. Think right angle of the left leg. So if you take yoga, it's like warrior two in the leg. The right leg stays reaching back. And press the inner right thigh or inner left thigh into the mat. Inner left ankle bone down into the mat. So we're doing a strong push down with that left leg into the floor. And can you keep the inner knee against the floor, but float the inner ankle, inner calf, and whole foot up away from the ground? So an internal rotation. Then bring it back till it touches down. As soon as it touches down, can you lift it up again, gradually floating it. And gradually lowering it. Let's go 5 on each side. And on the 5th one, we're going to pause and hold. So as soon as you feel touchdown, start to lift again. Bring it to touchdown. Lift again. Hold it. Can you rotate it even more? Could you potentially rotate it so internal that the sole of your foot points up to the ceiling? Working. Hold it up there. 3, 2, 1. Let it touch down. Extend that leg long behind you, sticking the right leg out to the side like a warrior two. Right? So it's a right angle. Start with a little bit of coaching by pushing the leg into the floor, securing the leg down into the floor. So you know what it feels like to have your inner knee pushing the floor. And then you're not going to lift that inner knee, but you are going to lift the lower leg, which is coming from internal rotation of your hip. Up it goes. And slowly down. And as soon as you make contact with the floor, up it goes again in a gradual and controlling bringing it down. Keep going. Feel where this is coming from inside of your hip sockets. On this last one, this fifth one, go, 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 hold, hold. Maybe the sole of your foot is shining up like a flashlight to the ceiling above you. One more breath. And slowly down. Extend the leg behind you. Lay your chest closer to the floor, hands by your breastbone. Take it into a child's pose or a tabletop if child's pose is not your thing. Breathe into your belly, your chest, your rib cage, expansive. Then come to hands and knees pose up through table. Swing your legs around. Take a seat on your yoga mat with your legs extending out in front of you. And find a way to sit tall. If that means you have to bend your knees a little bit or maybe tuck a blanket under your butt to find this idea of like a vertical but neutral spine. And then take your left leg back. Try not to grab and pull, just like lift it, step the foot close to your sit bone so your left knee is pointing up to the ceiling. Take your yoga block and stick it underneath your right calf. So your foot and ankle will be hanging off the block, but the calf is on the block. It's propped up. And then let's create some strength in the upper body. So wrap both arms around that left leg and brace the leg into your body to sit up as tall as you possibly can. Now point the toes of your right foot. Right? So that front ankle is reaching away from you. And push your right calf down into the block. You're doing a lot of push down pull-ups today. Push your right calf down into the block at 30% of what's capable for you. One more breath with the downward push. And then go into a lift. Can you float that calf up away from the block? Holding the leg up, like you're trying to push the front of your shin up into the ceiling. 3, 2, 1. Let it come down. Soften your quad. Sometimes the quad can get crampy there. I want you to notice if you're leaning back, the leg's going to go up a lot easier than if you're really stacked shoulders over hips. So attempt to be leaning forward in a vertical position. Let's go to 70% push down. Point the toes, push the shin, push the calf into the block. Can you feel that right glute underneath you firing as you push the leg down? So this is trying to take this leg into extension. Right? If there's no floor here, this leg would sweep back behind us. One more breath with the push down. Then flip it, pulling up. So from the front of your right hip, lift as high as you can through the front leg. Hold it up there. Keep the toes pointed. 3, 2, 1, set it down. Oh, that was only 50%. We got one more round and that's the 70. Adjust if you need to get vertical. Point the toes. So this makes the calf work. And then push, drive the back of the calf into the block. Downward, downward push. Feel the right glute like underneath you, almost like you sat on a hot car seat. Right? Pushing down. Then can you go into the switch? Up, how high? How high can you hold it? Try not to lean back. 3, 2, 1, let it go. Okay. Yes, yes, yes. Switch. Bring that right knee into you. Oh, it'll feel so good to bend that knee. Prop your calf up on the block. Adjust yourself so you can feel, okay, my spine is pretty straight up and tall. My head's right on top of my shoulders. Point the left toes. Press down 30%, no big deal. 30% into the block. So there's a little bit of a tone of the butt that's underneath the left leg. So it's left glute firing. And then 30% into your left. So floating it, hovering it, holding it up there. And if you do 70% now, you're not going to have any gas for when we get to 70%. So really only 30. And then let it come all the way down. Take a moment, adjust. See that you're sitting up vertical. Really hugging right leg in close to the body. Use the arms to create that verticality. Now go to your 50% push down. And you might notice like one glute fires better than the other. Like I'm sitting here noticing my left glute is a little sleepy. I know this about myself, but I can really, really feel it here. So you might notice things about you too. Discrepancies between sides. Okay, let's swap into lifting. Float 70%. Or sorry, 50, not 70. Hold it up there. 3, 2, 1, and let it go. Okay, last round, lightning round. Adjust your seat, vertical, point the toes, 70% push down. Okay. Like you could sweep your leg through the floor and kick it back behind you. Then using your next exhale when it arrives, go into 70% pull up. How high? Go for it. Raise it. Stay tall. Hold it up. 3, 2, 1. Let it go. Bend that knee in towards you as well. Hug the legs in. Okay. Move your block off to the side. Take your legs in front of you. They're at hips distance. The toes are grounded. The soles of the feet are grounded. You're sitting up tall. And then hold into your knee creases. And try to do little roll downs with your sacrum. So we're not rolling the upper back or the shoulders. It's just the sacrum, tucking under and then standing tall again. So you're kind of moving the weight to the back edge of the sit bones and then the middle of the sit bones. Now you can start to let the lumbar get involved. So it's like a real big rounding of the tailbone underneath you, belly hollowing back and then coming back up. So it's segmenting just a different position to gravity. Rolling sacrum under, lumbar under, then coming back up to sitting tall. Start to let your arms get a little straighter as you're doing this, so you can get more of the spine to the floor. Then to see like maybe you don't need your arms. It becomes a little bit more core control. And then let more of your spine go down. Like how low can you go without letting the shoulder blades touch? And then bring it all the way back up. Think of pushing sacrum into ground, pushing lumbar into ground, pushing lower thoracic in the ground. Soon as you get to shoulder blades, come back up. And on the next one, go all the way, all the way, all the way. How slow can you go? How slow can you go? Each individual bone of the spine landing, 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 until the shoulder blades go, oh, and then the head goes, and then the arms go. And you're supine on your yoga mat. Heel toe your feet as wide as the mat. Keep your knees bent. Take your arms wide like a T. Windshield wipe, side to side. Big pivots. And you can let your hips do this. Right? So we have two halves to our pelvis. Right? The pelvis, it feels like it's just one big bony structure, but it's actually two halves. Right? There's a right hemisphere and there's a left hemisphere. So the bottom of our pubic bone, there is a space, a joint, right, called the pubic symphysis. And then we have in the back of us the sacroiliac joints on the right and left hemispheres of the pelvis, which is where the sacrum and the iliacus meet each other. So the pelvis is not one thing, it's two halves. Think of turning each half as you're rotating. Bring it back, knees pointing to the ceiling, heel toe your feet into hips distance. Left ankle over right thigh. Eye of needle, pick up your right leg, interlace behind the thigh or through to the shin. Flex the left foot strong, draw your legs in towards you, stretching the outer hips that we worked so hard today. Release right side, uncross right ankle or left ankle, and then switch right ankle over left thigh. Eye of needle, pick up left foot to the shin or to around the back of the thigh. Keep your right foot flexed, pull your legs in close to you. Releasing the interlace, landing left foot. Uncross right ankle. Arms by your side, palms down. Close your eyes. Practice your deepest breaths so far today. So with eyes closed, palms down, and feet grounded, breathe. Think of the breath coming in three parts, right? Three bands, the belly band, the rib cage band, the top chest band expanding. And then emptying, emptying, emptying. Keep your eyes closed and rolling up and down through bridge. So with the breath initiating, inhale, hips raise, palms and arms float. As hips reach higher, arms go all the way overhead till the fingernails tap. Exhale, lowering everything as if it's one unit. Follow the rhythm of your deep breathing. So there is a timing happening here, a little coordination between the limbs happening here. Linking breath and movement. Last one, with your inhale slowly floating up. And with the exhale, slowly settling all the way down. Rotate palms up, slide your arms a little wider so they're long by the sides but wide, and stretch your legs along the mat one at a time. Coming into our final position, resting. And bring your awareness to breath, the gentle expansion, the gentle contraction of it. And find movement in toes, coupled with movement of fingers. And stretch the arms, reach the legs, take up some space. And bend your knees one at a time. Gently roll to your side. And press down into the mat and lift yourself all the way up to a seat that's comfortable. Closing eyes, joining hands, this gesture of gratitude, and grateful for the resilience of our bodies, of our minds, and most importantly, of our hearts. Thank you so much for coming today.